Election buzz, the million-dollar question. Will Vice President Joe Biden jump into the race? Holy Land violence. Israel forces and Palestinian protesters clash in the land of Jesus' birth. All in the family. The parents of one of the most beloved saints of all time will be canonized this weekend. And papal charity. Pope Francis visits the homeless at the Vatican's new shelter. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, October 16th, 2015. Good evening and thanks for joining us for this special edition of EWTN News Nightly. I'm Jason Calvi, in for Brian Patrick with your news now. Will he or won't he? Just as Democrats were starting to count Vice President Joe Biden out, he sends a strong signal he may soon enter the presidential race. Catherine Szeltner has the latest from the White House. Catherine?
Jason, it looked like Hillary Clinton boxed Biden out of the race with her strong debate performance this week. But last night, a close advisor to the vice president hints that is not the case.
Have you made your decision yet?
Can't hear you.
Have you made your decision yet?
He deflects questions in front of reporters. Behind closed doors, though, Biden is reportedly making calls to strategists from Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, even asking some to work for him if he runs. Political pundits say he's missed that chance.
And if I'm Biden, I don't see any way to get on the stage between Sanders' performance, certainly near the end, and Hillary Clinton's domination. I don't see a road in for Biden.
But now we're learning how Biden will run, not if. Last night, former Senator Ted Kaufman emailed past Biden staffers outlining the presidential strategy. He writes it would be a campaign from the heart, a campaign consistent with his values, our values, and the values of the American people. He continues, if he decides to run, we will need each and every one of you yesterday, alluding to the breakneck speed necessary for the campaign. Kaufman and Biden are close. Kaufman was Biden's chief of staff for 2 decades before replacing him in the Senate. If he plans to run, Biden will need to answer questions sooner than later.
Talk to y'all about that later.
The first deadline Biden faces is October 29th. That's when Georgia decides who appears on the state's ballot. Sources say Biden will make his decision within the next 3 days. Jason?
Thank you, Catherine. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Nigerian officials say suicide attacks have killed some 50 people. Witnesses say 4 women blew themselves up when challenged by soldiers. Just hours earlier, 2 bombs exploded near a mosque, killing at least 30. Authorities suspect the militant group Boko Haram is behind the bombings. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his military strikes in Syria have killed hundreds of militants. Putin speaking to leaders of ex-Soviet nations meeting in Kazakhstan today. He says the Russian military has had impressive results from the air campaign. Putin is calling ex-Soviet nations to work together to prevent possible militant invasions from Afghanistan. Tensions in the Holy Land lead to tightened security during Muslim prayers today. Palestinians and Israeli security forces continue to clash in Bethlehem. The protesters in the West Bank set fire to the site known as the tomb of the biblical patriarch Joseph. Over the past month, Palestinian attacks killed 8 Israelis, and Israel fire has killed more than 30 Palestinians. Israel says half of the Palestinian dead were attackers. Well, several Republican presidential candidates are criticizing President Obama over his new strategy in Afghanistan. President Obama breaks his promise to end America's longest war by next year.
I've decided to maintain our current posture of 9,800 troops in Afghanistan through most of next year, 2016.
Republican candidate Rand Paul says troops shouldn't be there at all.
I think it's a mistake. It's also not what our founding fathers intended.
But others criticize the broader strategy. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush released a statement saying Obama shouldn't shortchange what our military commanders have said they need to complete the mission. while other candidates are criticizing the president's leadership.
The military commanders on the ground in Afghanistan have been making the point for some time to this president that his strategy of complete withdrawal by a date certain, which he telegraphed years in advance, was a flawed strategy.
I'm telling you, he's picked a number that's not militarily sound. He intentionally ignored all military advice to keep a residual force in Iraq.
To me, it's probably a reaction to the 60 Minutes interview where people said he looked weak.
Not all of the reaction from Republican 2016 hopefuls was negative. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, and Florida Senator Marco Rubio all supported the decision. And Hillary Clinton's longtime aide testifies before the House Benghazi panel investigating the 2012 attacks in Libya. Huma Abedin serves as vice chairwoman of Clinton's presidential campaign. She was interviewed behind closed doors. Clinton herself will testify before the committee in a public hearing next Thursday. This comes after House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy said the committee was hurting Clinton's presidential hopes. The panel chairman says their work isn't driven by politics. A federal judge says he'll soon rule on one state's move to defund Planned Parenthood. Governor Bobby Jindal is attempting to cut off state funding to Planned Parenthood in Louisiana. Jindal is a Republican presidential candidate. Other states have made similar moves to stop funding. And we're learning more about the pro-life activists behind the undercover Planned Parenthood videos, which have ignited those efforts to defund the abortion provider. Thanks to a Washington Post profile, we know David Daleiden was born out of a crisis pregnancy. His parents were juniors in college at the time of his birth. Daleiden's interest in the pro-life movement was sparked during high school. The Millennials' videos have led to 4 congressional investigations. October is Respect Life Month, and over the past 20 years, one group has enrolled the pro-life message in colleges across the country. Mark Irons tells us students who are also mothers are eager to learn.
Here at Georgetown University, the halls are empty and for the most part, classes are done for the day. But in room 213, it's not your typical night class.
Our daycare on campus.
Topics include infant care and clothing. There are questions.
I think this one's pretty to the point.
And answers.
No woman should be forced to choose between her education or her family.
Saren Foster is the president of Feminist for Life. The pro-life group says abortion shows society does not give mothers the resources they need.
Having an abortion or dropping out of school and facing a lifetime of poverty is just not good enough. We can do better.
That's why the group travels the country to hold pregnancy resource forums.
Money management, child care.
Their goal? To connect parents with resources on college campuses. Mothers like Danae Thomas are grateful.
It helped me graduate. I was able to have babysitters and be able to go to class.
Her son Kelvin is with her tonight. Like Danae, Catherine Rubio was able to graduate college and care for her son, Juan. She lived in special housing for moms.
Instead of having to live in dorm rooms where there are other Georgetown students, we're able to kind of be a part and live our college lives as student moms as well.
Feminist for Life has been helping students who are parents for 20 years. It's a reason to celebrate, especially for the kids. Kelvin gets the first piece of cake, and Juan takes the balloons home. Their mothers couldn't be happier. Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Mark Irons with that report. The parents of St. Therese of Lasoo will be named saints this Sunday. Louis and his wife Zélie Martin will be the first ever married couple with children to be canonized in the same ceremony. The parents of the beloved French saint had 9 children. The couple had a deep spiritual life, fueled by daily mass, prayer, and visits to the elderly and sick. The Synod of Bishops gathering in the Vatican today heard from other Christian leaders. An Anglican bishop says the term pastoral care, which refers to the spiritual care of the faithful, is often misunderstood.
I always think that the word pastoral is so often misunderstood, and in my world it can often be seen as a soft way, a way of saying something nice to people. Actually, pastoral work is sometimes the most difficult work you can possibly do.
Thornton was speaking during a briefing with reporters. And Archbishop Eamon Martin of Armagh, Ireland, joins us now from Rome. Your Excellency, you've been elected leader of one of the English small group sessions. What were some of the highlights this week?
Well, fantastic week's discussions. We've really got together as a group and people are beginning to share much more openly and much more freely about their experiences from different countries. For example, just this afternoon, we decided to ask ourselves the question, what are we doing in our countries to support family and to support marriage? And it was just amazing to hear the accounts from India, from Indonesia, from the Philippines, from Nigeria, from Australia, the United States, of the fantastic work that is going on in our countries to support marriage. But it's something that we feel a practice that we need to share. We need to build on this good practice so that the family is truly valued and truly supported in our church.
And week 2 of the Synod has wrapped up. How would you sum up the meeting so far?
I think week 2 has really got us to drill down into this question, what is the vocation of the family nowadays? You see, I find myself every single day looking at the theme of this synod, which is the vocation and the mission of the family in the church and in the contemporary world. And we sometimes forget that it is a vocation to be married, to have a family. And I think that just as many countries are suffering a decline in vocations to the priesthood and the consecrated life, then perhaps we're also suffering a decline in that sense of vocation to marriage and vocation to the family. And therefore, they need supported in the same way, by prayer, by a good, clear and challenging vision of what marriage and the family is about, and by fraternal support and accompaniment.
This Sunday, St. Teresa's parents, Louis and Zelly Martin, will be canonized. I understand you have a special devotion to them.
Yeah, Martin's my own family name, and my mum had a great devotion to St. Therese of Lisieux. For that reason, I actually have a sister called Zélie Martin. As she was growing up, she was probably the only Zélie Martin in the whole of Ireland, but now her name's famous, and it's just wonderful to be able to share this moment of the canonization of a married couple. What a wonderful way Pope Francis has chosen of acknowledging the vocation and the mission of the married couple in the church and in today's world.
Thank you, Archbishop Martin.
Thank you.
And Pope Francis visits the Vatican's new homeless shelter. The shelter is just a few blocks from St. Peter's Square. Francis spent about 20 minutes on Thursday with the men and volunteers. Also on hand, the sisters from Mother Teresa's order who run the shelter. The Vatican also offers showers and a barber shop for the neighboring homeless. Until Monday, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Jason Calvi. Good night, and God bless.